Welcome, everyone, to the Board of Regents meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marty Guay.
Present.
Richard Balducci. Here. Ira Bloom.
Present.
Sorry, I haven't been saying Regent, excuse me. Regent Del Cummings. Present. Regent Juanita James is absent. Regent Japanin.
I'm present.
Regent Richard Porth. Present. Regent Ari Santiago.
Present.
Regent Aaron Stewart. Absent. Regent Elise Wright. Absent. Actually, she indicated she was going to be a little late. My apologies. Regent Donald Williams.
Present.
Regent Dakota Lawson. Absent. Regent Tyler Yee.
Here.
FAC Regent Brendan Cunningham.
Present.
FAC Regent Kalina Sasenker.
Present.
Commissioner Bartolomeo.
Present.
Commissioner Jutani. Commissioner O'Keefe. Or David Stuber, his designee. Commissioner Russell Tucker. And Chief Workforce Officer Kelly Marie Valliers.
Present.
Undersecretary Charlene Casamento.
Present.
Chancellor John Maduco.
Present.
President Zolma Toro. Michael Moriarty for President Ed Klonowski. President Karim Ismaili. Interim President Sandra Bulmer.
Present.
President Jesse Bernal. Interim President Christina Royal. Whoop, Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Secretary Buffkin. I'd like to tell those in the room that if you want to speak, you'll have to speak into a microphone and hold the button down while you're speaking. At this point, I would like, as a point of privilege, to ask President Karim Ismaili to start off the meeting with an introduction and a brief update on Eastern Connecticut State University.
Thank you very much, Chair Guay. On behalf of the entire campus community, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to Eastern Connecticut's Public Liberal Arts University. I want to thank the Chancellor's Office, Eastern's Office of Events and Engagement, Facilities, Maintenance, Media Services, and our food service partners, Chartwells, for their work in organizing today's meeting. As you know, there are 3 institutional presidents at Eastern. The President of the University Senate, Professor Kristen Morgan, who is here with us today, Professor of Communications, Film, and Theater at Eastern, myself, and our President of the Student Government Association, Mia Summers. It is my honor to cede some of my time to Mia this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Eastern Connecticut State University. On behalf of the Student Government Association and the student body, it's an honor to welcome you all back to campus. We know your work is often focused on planning, advocacy, and the big decisions that shape the future of higher education. But today I want to share a glimpse of what those decisions mean to us, the students whose lives are transformed here at Eastern. As a student and the SGA president for the past 2 years, I've seen firsthand the ways that Eastern brings out the best in us. Through challenging coursework with great professors and staff who care deeply about our success, through opportunities for personal growth and community involvement. Eastern helps students find their voices. I found mine when I had the opportunity as a student orientation counselor, helping new warriors feel supported from day one. I also had the opportunity to study abroad in Florence, Italy, an experience that deepened my understanding of the liberal arts core curriculum that Eastern provides, one that encourages curiosity, empathy, and a broader view of the world and our place in it. That same spirit of learning beyond the classroom is reflected in the work that students do through the Community Center for Engagement. Each year, Eastern students contribute more than 15,000 volunteer hours to organizations throughout Wyndham and beyond, demonstrating that our commitment to service and to being active citizens who give back to the community support us. Recently, I had the privilege of co-signing a letter with President Ismaili and University Senate President Kristen Morgan, reaffirming our shared commitment to keeping Eastern a welcoming and inclusive place for all, especially during a time where the world beyond campus can sometimes feel divided. That message, that every student belongs here, felt right, and it just felt like Eastern. I know it mattered, especially to our newest first-year and transfer students who are just finding their place in our community. I understand that Eastern is often discussed at meetings like this in terms of resources and priorities, but please know from an Eastern senior, this university is far more than numbers on a page. It's a community that helps people become the best versions of themselves. It's transformed my life and the lives of my classmates in ways that can't always be measured, but can absolutely be felt. Thank you so much for the work that you all do to support Eastern and all of Connecticut's public universities. If there's ever an opportunity for me or the student government to tell our story or strengthen the student experience, please reach out. We're always proud to help represent Eastern as warriors. Thank you. If there's ever an opportunity for me or the student government to tell our story.
Thank you, President Summers. So there are so many exceptional things underway at Eastern. I just want to share 2 quick snapshots. Last Friday, we hosted a reunion of alums who graduated from Eastern 50 years ago. We do this every year. So last year was the class of 1974. Next year will be 76. This was a time when Jaws was the movie of the summer. Bill Gates founded Microsoft in a garage. And Stevie Wonder performed on this very campus. Our alums are so proud of the education they received and all have a special affection for Eastern. At the same time, they expressed some surprise that 2 places on our campus have not changed. Low Rise, one of our residence halls, was built in 1971, and our sports center, which was built in 1973, they're exactly the same, in exactly the same places. So the question for me is, does that make sense? More importantly, do students today deserve something new at a campus where 90% of our first-time, full-time students live on campus, and where our open house, inviting students to experience Eastern, gather in an unconditioned gym, and where, because of lack of space, our women's basketball team practices at 6:30 in the evening and then wake up to practice at 6:30 the very next morning. I recently joined 17 students on a trip to Washington, D.C. It was Eastern Day at the World Bank. What an amazing opportunity for our students to visit our capital, visit museums, and tour historic sites. So here's the question I had for my team. What kind of bus will we be taking our students in? Will it have Wi-Fi? No. Will it have restroom? No. The answer, of course, was yes. It had both, because we had to provide that. It's what we do, it's what we need to do. But everything we do obviously costs money. So when I think about students of the past, present, and future, I think about maintaining and enhancing quality both in and outside the classroom, and I appreciate the work that this board is doing to support what I believe is a shared vision. So thank you for being here at Eastern today.
Thank you, President Ismaili, and Mia, thank you for your strong and clear voice. At this time, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The agenda is adopted. At this point, I'd like to turn over to CSCU Interim Chancellor John Maduco for comments.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Chair Gui. Regents, President Ismaili, fellow presidents or leaders or guests, students, union representatives, John Meduco. For starters, I want to begin my remarks to acknowledge that back on the 15th was the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. And I want to thank the various affinity groups and leaders and practitioners across our campuses that came together to help educate our communities about the impact and value of our Hispanic and Latinx communities across the state and really across this country. You know, so much is provided in terms of impact and value from various educators and individuals. You know, the Zolma Toros, the Jesse Bernals, the Manuel Gomez, countless individuals that really are the epitome of the power and strength of the Hispanic community. So I wanted to mention that. Next, I want to speak to the federal government shutdown. You know, as we all know, the federal government has shut down, and it's led to concerning sentiments on the part of a lot of individuals across the state. We are being mindful. We are monitoring all developments, and we continue to communicate with state government on what we deem as any form of impact to our institutions, to our programs, to our employees and students. We also recognize that many of our students and many of our employees are directly impacted by the federal shutdown. As you know, federal employees are being furloughed. Some are being laid off. So again, we need to be cognizant of what that means for us here in Connecticut and continue to work with our own state government to ensure that we're doing everything we can for the needs of these individuals. I want to thank President Ismaili and the entire Eastern Connecticut State University community for welcoming and hosting this month's Board of Regents meeting, hosting our leaders. I've had the privilege of joining President Ismaili on countless occasions here at Eastern to see firsthand the value and the beauty of everything that's going on here. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity of joining President Ismaili's LAC 100 Why Universities Matters course. He gave me the opportunity to meet and speak with students, share my personal story, but also hear firsthand about their lived experiences, right? So there were students in that course that shared why they're in college due to the sacrifice of their parents. There are students that share the financial challenges that they have to overcome in terms of working full-time and being a full-time student, or partnering with their parents to figure out how to pay for their education, or simply still trying to figure out ultimately what major and careers that they're seeking. So that was awesome to see. And also that a university president, as busy as he is spending time inside the classroom to see firsthand how our students are doing, how they're learning, and what more that he can do and what more Eastern can do for their success. Additionally, a couple weeks ago, we joined Governor Lamont, Congressman Joe Courtney, leaders from Hartford Healthcare, countless local elected officials for the ceremonial ribbon cutting of the simulation wing at Wyndham Hospital, right? It was a beautiful day, standing room only. Happy nursing faculty, happy nursing students, and really community members beaming with pride in terms of now what is the largest simulation center in all of Eastern Connecticut, and demonstrating Eastern Connecticut's commitment to not only nursing, but to the increase of nursing professionals in a region that definitely needs it. So, President Ismaili, yes, the mission of Eastern Connecticut is centered around the liberal arts, but this institution is home to so many individuals that are giving back to the local community. So I just want to commend you, your faculty and staff, for what you continue to do. Additionally, I want to move on to institutional quality and NETCHI, our accreditors. NETCHI is a New England Commission of Higher Education. They accredit 100% of the institutions of higher education in New England. And recently, there have been engagements with NETCHI with 3 of our institutions. At Western 2 weeks ago, led by President Bernal, they had a focused site visit by NETCHI. And President Bernal invited Dr. Blanchard, Chairman Guay, myself to sit down with these site visitors to share our confidence and reaffirm our commitment to the success of Western. So, President Bernal, I really want to commend you, Provost Hegedus, your entire administration, the faculty and staff, for really preparing Western for a very laborious process. But, I'm pleased to share that President Bernal has informed the board and myself that he's received initial positive feedback from NECHI in terms of the measured, strategic, and practical approach that they are taking. So really kudos to you and your team. Next, at CT State, due to a scheduling conflict, I was voluntold by President Christina Royal to represent her in Boston with her leaders to sit with the commission in person to discuss their findings for CT State's focus site visit that took place in April. And it was an opportunity for us to discuss the governance, the ongoing governance improvements, financial sustainability, operations, and student success. And President Royal shared with me that NECHI has provided her informally rave reviews in terms of just the steady levels of improvement and progress that's been demonstrated across CT State. Now CT State is focused on their comprehensive accreditation vision that will take place in the fall of 2027. This will be the most complicated and largest site visit in the history of NECHI because CT State's the largest institution in New England. So, but we have a great leader, we have great leaders, and great commitment on the part of everyone there. So just kudos to CT State. And then lastly, I'm pleased to share that President Toro informed me that, Central Connecticut State University and a handful of other institutions here in New England went through a review process, and they have been recognized as a NECHI recognized institution for their non-quoted programs per their Office of Professional Education, the first in Connecticut and one of the first institutions in this country. I really want to commend President Toro, your faculty, your professional staff for pioneering this significant achievement and really, diversifying their portfolio into the non-credit programming. NECHI and their standards of accreditation require a peer-reviewed process, but more importantly, ensure that there is quality improvement across all of the member institutions. All 6 of our institutions take this seriously, right? Because we want to ensure to our state, to our citizens, to our students, to our board, that there is quality and that we are credible in terms of what we're doing. So kudos to all of our institutions. I want to quickly highlight student success. We have talked about how enrollment is up across our system to the tune of 6.7%, and that is great. But I really want to speak to the why on what we do, right? Our completion, so student completion is up by 7%. Retention is up across our system, and graduation is up. And I want to highlight that at CT State, graduation is up by 39%, right? These student success metrics align with the ACT framework, our North Star as a system, right? And you're seeing the collaboration and the commitment across our campuses as it relates to ensuring that our students are learning, but more importantly, they are completing, right? They're being successful, and they're moving on to their careers and what they want to do with their lives. So really proud of that effort across our institutions. There have been questions about the Finish Line Scholarship, also known as PAC Plus, and what are the efforts taking place at CSCU. I'm happy to share that our presidents are taking the lead in terms of coming together to develop an agreed upon framework to ensure that we fully exercise the $7.7 million that has been appropriated to our system in regards to this debt-free expansion at our four-year institutions, right? This is a huge opportunity. Yes, this is a financial opportunity, but it's really a transfer, right? It's really an opening for us to be better as it relates to transfer within CSCU, starting at CT State and finishing at our 5 phenomenal four-year institutions. So looking forward to the recommendations that will be issued by our presidents and partnership with the system office to ensure that we are adhering to the statutory expectations, but also the accountability reporting that we'll have to issue the state government. I know Dr. Blanchard, and I know, Regent Balducci will speak to, a report and progress regarding our finances, but I just want to quickly share, because I continue and our system continues to be asked questions about our reserves. Our reserves are not one pot. Our reserves are split primarily across our 6 institutions. But our system has made a commitment to draw down to the tune of $162 million of our collective reserves over the course of the 26-27 biennium, right? So we are not sitting on a treasure trove. We are being strategic and responsible as it relates to our finances. But we need to be cautious and we need to be conservative. As I mentioned earlier, there is a federal government shutdown, right? And that is why you have reserves. When something unforeseen and impactful is taking place, and I know that this board, I know our presidents, I know our community will continue to hold ourselves accountable as it relates to our finances. The theme of my interim leadership has been about empowerment. And no better form of empowerment is to uplift and back our institutional president. So I want to announce that President Zolma Toro will be leading efforts as it relates to applied and experiential learning, starting at Central Connecticut, because that's one of the core values and pillars at Central, but really looking at what could that opportunity look like for the entire system. So President Toro, I look forward to your leadership in that area. I also want to mention that President Bulmer at Southern, she'll be leading a 2.0 or Chapter 2 of the Healthcare Task Force. We issued that report earlier this calendar year, and now it's time for us to move forward towards strategic investments and strategic partnerships to move towards scaling our phenomenal healthcare portfolio. So looking forward to President Bulmer's leadership. And then lastly, I have charged President Bernal and President Royal on a co-location opportunity between Western Connecticut State University and CT State's satellite campus in Danbury. So looking forward to their recommendations in terms of how there can be greater synergy between our 2 institutions to support not only Danbury, but the entire Western Connecticut region. Earlier this year, and I'm not sure if you can see on camera, I have a Band-Aid in my pinky, but earlier this week, we had an event. President Toros was so gracious to host a press conference and an event in partnership with Stop and Shop. Stop and Shop has donated $200,000 to our food pantries across all of our campuses, right? And really helping us address student food insecurity. At least 25% of all college students in the United States suffer some form of food insecurity. And here within CSCU, we've seen double-digit increases on the reliance of our food pantries across our institutions. So it was a beautiful day and a beautiful moment. I got to officially meet Kaiser. I think Kaiser, the Blue Devil. Yes, Kaiser, the Blue Devil. Wally, President Smalley, I met Wally the Warrior.
Willie the Warrior.
Willie. Okay, I stand corrected. Right, so I will apologize after the meeting. Right, so got to hang out with the mascots, but more importantly, it was a great day of collaboration. After the press conference, we went to the Student Center and we put together 1,000 care packages with representatives and leaders from Stop and Shop. Right, it was collaboration. It was being shoulder to shoulder to individuals. And at some point, though, I was working the Peach assembly line area. I looked down and I said, I don't think I've been packaging jelly, right? I'm like, I don't think I've been packaging jelly. Oh no, I cut my finger, right? So there's blood or what have you. I got gauze, I got duct tape. I brought my back to the assembly line because putting those packages were really important. So President Toro, I apologize for bleeding on your campus. That's never my goal. And I don't believe my DNA contaminated any of the packages, but I was really happy to participate and really glad to see leaders and representatives across our institutions there at Southern working on something together. I want to close with thanking our leadership, our faculty, our staff, our students, our regents, as we continue to mitigate what has been a very eventful and challenging fiscal and academic year. There are a lot of unknowns that are taking place both at the federal and state level. And I urge all of us to accept that we're going to have to make a big pivot as a system and as institutions, right? Don't know what it's going to look like at the end of this year, right? But we are seeing our sector not only being under attack, but being challenged to be more and do more. And the one thing I know is if we rally around the mission of being student-centered, right, and leaning on each other, there's nothing that we can't overcome. So again, I thank everyone who's been involved. I look forward to all of our respective insights and inputs and contributions as we continue to support our students and adhere to our student-centered mission. So, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Interim Chancellor Maduco. Great comments. I certainly want to make sure that I'm a little shorter because I think you covered a lot of great ground with what our institutional leaders are doing, how our system office is supporting them, how our faculty is driving student success, and how our administrators are facilitating that moment. Over the last month since our last meeting, I had a few meetings which I thought were interesting. I've had many more meetings that I won't talk about because I do have a lot of meetings as it relates to CSCU. But on September 16th, Eastern Connecticut State President Kristen Morgan invited me here to sit with the Senate. And in my role to sit with the Senate, it's very consultative, it's informative. I share what's on our minds, and everyone is liberated enough to share what's on their minds, which I really appreciate. So that was a really great visit on the 16th of September, 10 days later. CT State President L. Vandermark had me participate in the CT State Senate meeting in Enfield, Connecticut at his Nantuck. Another great meeting where I could really hear what's on people's minds and get updated. October 6th, went to NETCHI at WestCon and sat with the NETCHI team to talk about our board commitment to WestCon and hear about all the great progress. And I think what makes us succeed and what's making great momentum is our collaboration. Collaboration is the model that will get us to where we want to go, and relevance is the place we want to be. On October 16th, President Toro hosted a summit called Keeping Higher Education Engaging, Relevant, and Impactful. And I got a chance to join that along with some of my fellow regents, Sophia Japinen, Don Williams, Del Cummings, and it was really terrific. So I think, relevance is really a wonderful value that we all need to aspire to. So I want to thank everyone for their collaboration. Certainly, we need to deal with the challenges ahead. I don't think we have a monopoly on problems. I think higher ed has challenges across the country. So for me, I think with this team, to include everyone in this system, we're going to do quite well because we have great people, stem to stern. So with that, I'd like to turn over the agenda to a presentation on the fall 2025 enrollment report from CFO Dr. Lloyd Blanchard. The floor is yours, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Regents. Good morning, Eastern Connecticut State University. It's a pleasure to be here, Eastern faculty, staff, and students. And good morning, others and colleagues. Let me get this presentation up. There we go. So I'm here to present the enrollment report for fall of 2025. But before I take you through the numbers, I'd like to ask Chancellor Maduco to offer his preliminary comments on this particular topic. Chancellor?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Blanchard. I know this crowd has heard enough of me, but I just want to concisely and quickly speak to, our intentional efforts to expand, our definitions of enrollment. Pleased to share that as a system, during the 24-25 academic year, we served over 100,000 learners. To impact that number is not only the credit-based programs that we offer across our 6 institutions, but we play a significant role in the workforce development strategy for the entire state of Connecticut. I see, Dr. Kelly Valeries, who not only serves on our board, but leads the Office of Workforce Strategies. We work directly with our 5 regional investment boards, and countless nonprofits to meet the needs of Connecticut. And it's really important that we account for every single learner that gains something from one of our institutions across our campuses. That's really important. So our efforts in the coming months will continue to expand and tell our story that's more complete and comprehensive to ensure that the state of Connecticut and our stakeholders know exactly how we continue to serve the great state of Connecticut. Dr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Chancellor. So as we go through the enrollment report, I'll show a bunch of numbers, but I wanted to start by making sure Regents understood the sort of time periods and coverage of the data that we will present. In this report, I'll present both enrollment as well as the strategic ACT metrics, all except talent, but I wanted to address that here in a second. These data that represent each of these areas cover different time periods, and the data are available to us in our institutional research community at different points in the year. In terms of enrollment, we will be able to report current semester enrollment, and we'll show changes from fall 24 to fall 25, the current semester. These data obviously are the most important. They become available to us in September for the universities whose census date is September 16th, and Connecticut State Community College whose census date is September 17th. But in November, we are able to report Charter Oak's census data because their census date doesn't arrive until October 31st. They tend to have a more of a rolling enrollment process rather than the more traditional beginning of fall, beginning of spring. In terms of the access data largely captures demographic data as well as data on Pell Grant students, students who receive PAC, and these data are also available in the current semester, but they won't be available until November. We tend to spend the beginning of the fall semester focused on the enrollment numbers themselves. And so we want to thank, when I show all of these numbers, first of all, I want to thank the institutional research community at all of our institutions, at the universities and our colleges, because they are the ones that produce these numbers. I merely report them to the regents and to the public. In terms of our completions data, obviously completions cover graduation, and therefore the most recent data would be for the last academic year, particularly graduation numbers in the spring. So those data become available in the fall. We will be able to report the most recent data here today. And finally, when we report talent data, the talent data tend to come to us in arrears because our data on where our students are working after they graduate, 6 months, a year out, 2 years out, those data come available to us a good 2 years after the fact, and then we have to have those data matched up with the Department of Labor data in Connecticut in order to identify where they are working. And so those data come to us in September, but they will be quite a bit old. And so the most recent talent data will come to us in February, where we can show the most recent data. So I will not show you talent data today, but previously we had been showing talent data in terms of from which programs students graduate that are working 1 year after graduation. What we're more interested in, and this is consistent with the changes that Chancellor Meduco mentioned, we're more interested in where, in what industries those graduates are working. And so our institutional research community is working on linking our graduates to the NAICS data. NAICS data is what tells us which industries they work in, rather than which programs they graduated from. So with that, let's go through the numbers. First of all, I don't know if you could see the numbers. I apologize if they're too small. But in summary, our enrollment is up by 7.2%, as the Chancellor mentioned earlier. These are fall 24 to fall 25 numbers. CT State is up by 4.3%. CT State's numbers in the fall, these are credit-bearing enrollments. Consistent with Chancellor Meduco's comments, we are not reporting here yet non-credit numbers, but a third of our students are non-credit students. So this 70,000 students that you see to the far right-hand side represents 2/3 of the students that we support here in the state of Connecticut. So our changes as we go forward will incorporate those non-credit numbers. But for now, the credit numbers for CT State are at 37,863. As I said, that represents a 4.3% increase. At Charter Oak is facing tremendous growth in their enrollments at 27.1%, taking them from 1,766 students to now 2,244 students. The universities are up across the board at 9.8%. And you can see under the state universities, Central Connecticut State is up 12.7% in enrollments from fall to fall. Eastern is up 9.6%. Southern Connecticut State University is up 6.9%. And Western Connecticut State University is up 9.7% in their enrollments. So across the board, that represents a successful enrollment for this fall semester. Now, you may wonder, how many of these students are dual and concurrent students? These are high school students taking college classes at one of our institutions. We are seeing tremendous growth. It's not shown on the screen, but we are seeing tremendous growth in our dual and concurrent enrollments. Central Connecticut State reports, and this is not for the fall of '25, but this reports last year because our dual and concurrent data come in on an annual basis rather than on a semester basis. So Central last year reported a 176% increase in their dual and concurrent enrollments, now at 1,130 dual students. Eastern Connecticut State reports a 52% increase in their dual and concurrent enrollments, now at 754 students. Southern has 2,451 students. That represents a 76% increase year over year. Western Connecticut State has 372 dual and concurrent students. That represents a 128% increase year over year. CT State Community College has the vast majority, or rather at least half, of all of our dual and concurrent students at 5,885 dual and concurrent students. That's a 7% increase from the previous year. So overall, our dual and concurrent students, we're serving 10,592 dual and concurrent students. Overall, that's a 33% increase. We're very pleased with that particular increase. As you can see back on the slide, our graduate enrollments are also up modestly at the universities, but tremendously at Charter Oak State College, going from 83 graduate students to now 115 graduate students. And not to forget those who are completing their certificates, 2,226 students completed certificate programs. These are for credit certificates as opposed to workforce and non-credit certificates, but that number is up 21% across the board. So we're very pleased with the successful fall semester in terms of our enrollments. Next, I will present to you the access data, and you can see a similar framework showing all of our institutions and all of the campuses of CT State Community College. First, in terms of our Handley and PAC program, this is up 73.3%. If you look across the community college campuses, you can see tremendous growth at every single campus in terms of those who are taking advantage of the PAC program. So we certainly appreciate the work done by the General Assembly in passing this program because it certainly is helping students across the state and certainly our own enrollment numbers. In the middle part of the panel, you'll see growth in our Pell percentage. CT State is up 4.1% in terms of its Pell students who tend to come from moderate to low-income families. Charter Oak shows great growth in this particular group, about 12% growth year over year. The universities are slightly down in this particular group, less than 1%. In terms of our student diversity, we show an increase in our students of color. CT State is up in this category by 6.7%. Charter Oak is up nearly 6%, and the universities are showing strong growth in their student diversity growth at 8.2%. In terms of completions, again, we are seeing greater student success across our system. Across our system, now this is from spring 24 to spring 25, the most recent graduation season, we saw an increase in completions of about 7.8%. 8.3%. That's 12% increase at CT State, mostly in associate's degrees, 6.3% at Charter Oak. Of course, those are bachelor degrees. And the universities are up 3.2% in terms of the percentage of students that are graduating with bachelor's degrees. So again, it is a pleasure to report such success across our system. We look forward to reporting more success as we move forward. As the Chancellor mentioned earlier in his remarks, retention and graduation rates are also up across the system. In terms of retention rates, CT State Community College is up 4.6% in its retention. Charter Oak is up 8.8%. The universities are up nearly 1%. In terms of graduation rates, you see tremendous increase in the graduation rate at our community college at CT State, 38.9% increase in their graduation rate. Charter Oak has increased its graduation rate by 12.5%, and the universities are up across the board at 2%. There are some differences between the universities, but overall, they are improving their graduation rates. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. Would you now be so kind as to present our system office reserve status?
I'd be happy to, sir.
Thank you.
So in terms of the system office reserves, as the Chancellor mentioned, well, first of all, before I take you through these numbers, I believe the Chancellor also wanted to offer preliminary comments on this topic, or do you want to go? You're done? Okay. I think he made those comments already in his remarks. So in terms of the numbers, what you will see on this slide, at the top of this table, you'll see the source of funds, denoted by the green highlights, and then the use of funds in the bottom part of the panel, denoted by the blue title highlights. On the left-hand side, you'll see the source and use of our undesignated funds. These are all unrestricted funds. Some of those unrestricted funds are what we call designated, which is on the right-hand side, and some of those unrestricted funds are undesignated, which are more flexible, if you will, and those are on the left-hand side. You will see that the source of undesignated funds includes $39.7 million, and you'll see sort of the source of those funds. These are savings that have accrued over many years because of unspent funds for one initiative versus another initiative. But if you move from that 39.7 down to the use of those funds, we are proposing to use $37.2 million of that 39.7, leaving a balance of $2.4 million in the undesignated reserve fund. The use of the undesignated funds, you can see already the board has passed $7 million for Eastern Connecticut State University and $7 million for Western Connecticut State University. Conversations continue about the proposed usage of the additional $7 million for Western, $2.3 million for Eastern. The board passed recently, or rather, I'm sorry, it will address today through its consent agenda the allocation of $15 million for the Banner implementation, the Banner SAS implementation. Of that $15 million, $4 million will come from reprogrammed bond funds, and $11 million will come from the undesignated balances shown here. And finally, $3 million is set aside for financial aid. Whether that's used for the PAC Plus program or not has yet to be determined. So the balance you could see for undesignated funds is $2.4 million if all of what is being proposed is passed by the board. On the right-hand side of this table, you'll see the designated balances, which are dominated by the debt service fund. This is the fund that is populated by the transfers that we take from the universities, and this really is just the universities. We transfer monies from the universities to pay for the debt service on their residential halls and their parking garages. These are facilities that generate revenues. It's those revenues that pay for the debt service for those facilities. So you can see mostly the funds is, at least on this report, is $89.5 million. You will see at the bottom, in terms of the use of these designated funds, the STIF funds, we've already passed, the board has already passed the use of $28.3 million for debt relief for the university because we had such a large surplus of debt service funds. This was a mechanism by which we can give the university some debt relief for FY26, the current fiscal year. And there was also some funds being held by Chifa that have recently been released. That adds up to nearly $25 million. So the balance, after the debt relief of $28.3 million and the release of the Chifa hold funds of $25 million, the balance is now $36.2 million. So overall, after assuming that all of these proposed uses are passed by the board, we expect to have $38.6 million remaining in the system office reserve accounts. I'm happy to take any questions Regents may have. Those questions could be related to the enrollment report as well as to the system office reserves.
Ex officio Regent Casamento.
Thank you so much, and Lloyd, I appreciate your presentation. As in putting forward this analysis, there's a proposal for Western for 27. And so my question is, as you start to think about future years, can I assume that you won't be asking the regents that do vote to vote on an allocation for 27 until they have a multi-year plan so they can appreciate how this investment sits up against potentially other needs that might exist? The second part of my question, which ties in to the STIF funds that are focused on auxiliary buildings, such as what President Amelie referred to earlier, is a status on the system's preparation of a 5-year plan specific to Chifa funding to support needed investments in the auxiliary buildings, which would include residence halls and gymnasiums. So if you could answer these questions here or at your leisure, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Regent Casamento. I can't answer them now, at least in brief. I'd be happy to provide greater detail after this meeting and next week. In terms of your first question, yes, I think it is a reasonable assumption that we will not be bringing any more proposals to the board as it relates to further use of system office reserves. That does not include potential proposals from the institutions themselves in terms of their proposals for using their own reserves. As the Chancellor mentioned, the reserves across the system, most of which lie at the institutions themselves. And so what I've presented here just relates to system office reserves. So given the fact that we've proposed to use much of the undesignated funds here in 26 and next year in FY27, I think it is a reasonable assumption that we will not bring additional proposals for the use of system office reserves in FY27. In terms of the 5-year plan for the Chifa program, we are developing that as we speak, Regent Casamento. So once we are complete, once that plan is complete, we'd be happy to share that with you and other regents on the board. Other questions?
Thank you, Lloyd.
I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify, my point for the board was included in your proposed use of undesignated funds is an amount for Western that relates to 27. And unless I've missed something, I don't think the board has received any projections for 27 and further that would allow them to have insight into what the finances look like prior to approving this $7 million that relates to 27. That was really more of the focus of my first question. Thank you.
So these are conversations that have been had between institutional presidents and select members of the board. These are not passed by the board yet, but they have been informed by previous iterations of our sustainability plan. We are looking to update our sustainability plan, but as Chancellor Maduka has mentioned at the previous board meeting, a lot is happening in higher education, particularly as it relates to federal funding. And so each time it seems we update the sustainability plan, there's another financial implication that we've not yet considered that will implicate itself in the sustainability plan. So we are holding the sustainability plans until we have a clearer view of what the federal impacts will be. And I see that Chancellor Maduko would like to respond. Chancellor?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Blanchard, and thank you, Regent Casamento, for your questions. A couple of things. We have 3 new institutional presidents. It has been my recommendation to our board chair and our board that we give our newer presidents time to recalibrate their respective sustainability plans. But we have 3 institutions that have completed their sustainability plans, and we plan on sharing at least those 3 plans with the board to Regent Casamento for your review, guidance, and support. Additionally, our accreditor, NECI, has set the expectation for all accredited institutions for 5-year sustainability plans. That's something that we are committed to. The board expects that of our institutions, not only to be transparent, but to ensure that there is a roadmap by which we are being mindful in terms of our expenditures, our use of reserves, and other forms of revenue coming to the institution. So we welcome your partnership, we welcome your questions, and we welcome any opportunity to illustrate our efforts. Regarding the proposed $7 million for Western, as Dr. Blanchard mentioned, that has not been approved. And as we continue to monitor our finances, potential, adjustments will be made. President Bernal, is there anything you want to add regarding Western?
Thank you, Chancellor Maduko. Regent Casamento, I would just say that one of those 3 institutions that's ready to share our 5-year plan is Western. We've shared it with our campus community, and we've continued to iterate on that. As our colleagues have said, those numbers are changing quite frequently, so we're remaining agile and flexible as we get new information. I will say we have presented 2 different scenarios, one that includes the $7 million support from the system reserves and one that doesn't. And that'll show sort of the trends and other mitigation measures we're taking to close some of our deficit gaps over the next few years. So we're happy to share those with the system office who already has them, and anybody else who's interested in seeing them. They're public. If you'll recall, we shared our full NECI response with the Board of Regents, which included our initial 5-year plan. That's now outdated given a lot of the changes, so we'll make sure we update that.
Thank you, President Bernal, and this was a discussion point, Regent Casamento, with the NECI accreditors. I spoke to them personally about this when I spent the whole day up in Danbury, and I can assure you that fiscal discipline and financial diligence is on top of our agenda. This is giving oxygen to a couple of our institutions that need it. Some of our other institutions that have been running well don't get it, and I know sometimes that's a bit of a rub, but we have to take decisions based upon a family here and a team, and as our institutions get healthier, we'll have more resources to invest in others.
Are there any other questions? Regent Porth?
A little bit different question. I note the proposed use of undesignated funds that would go towards financial aid is $3 million. That's encouraging. We've talked about that before here. How is that number derived? And then a follow-up question. How much do we accumulate each year in undesignated balances, and could we be thinking about how to commit as much money as we're able to towards financial aid in the future as well?
Okay, so in terms of how we arrived at the $3 million number, that was kind of we need to take care of these things first. The items shown on the screen, the $7 million items, as well as the $2.3 million item in the Banner SAS, that was kind of the balance that we could set aside and still leave $2.5 million at the table. $2.5 million may not seem like a lot for a billion-dollar system, but as I said earlier, each institution has its own reserves for contingency. This is a contingency effectively for the system office spending, which represents about 5% of our spending, which is a reasonable level of contingency, notwithstanding, of course, changes in terms of federal funding that could further impact all of us. In terms of how the undesignated balances accrue each year, if you look at the top, $39.7 million, the top left, each of those items, except for the CSU accrued compensated absences of $6.5 million, each of those items accrued over many years, 600,000 from that institution, 600,000 from that institution, over years and years and years, based on one or another initiatives we were asked to do, and these were leftover funds from those initiatives. And when I say many years, I say over 10 years or more. So very little accrues in the way of undesignated balances at the system office. This is one of the reasons why it grew to such a level. There was some preference to try to apply some of those dollars to actual usage. Once applied, however, these dollars are gone. They're one-time funds, and so we want to be able to use them prudently. On the right-hand side, in terms of your question, for designated balances, they tend to accrue a little more frequently, partly because debt service waxes and wanes around $26 to $30 million per year. So we tend to collect on the high end from the universities, and we make our debt payments twice a year in April and October. We basically put the money in the STIF account, and then CHIFA withdraws it from the STIF account to make those debt payments to the bondholders. We tend to accrue about $4 million, not quite $4, about $3 million a year in terms of those designated balances. So they grow fairly fast, largely not so much because of the gap between what we transfer to system office and what we pay in debt service, but because of the interest that is earned. Imagine interest that would be earned on something close to $90 or $100 million. It turns out to be about $400,000 per month. So that increases about $4 million. So yeah, we do increase that balance pretty aggressively each year. I think it's worth a conversation with the board and the institutional leadership on what is the appropriate amount of transfers that we can take to draw these numbers down. But as you can see here, the debt service relief really took a big chunk out of that $89 million, the $28.3 million. So, but it will continue to grow over time as we earn more interest, and that continues to grow, not as fast as we can transfer and make debt payments at $28 or so million a year, but it will grow. And every so often, I would say every 5 or 6 years, we'd probably have to do something like a debt service relief to draw it back down.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I know a lot of work and a lot of careful thought has gone into this, including through our finance committee. I intend to vote in favor of this. I would ask that in the future that we make the question of how to add to our financial aid pool a priority in any of these kinds of discussions, in any of them.
I would agree with that. That would be, if it were to come from system office, it would supplement the financial aid already being provided by the institutions. But I certainly would agree with that point. Other questions?
Just a comment that financial aid, that $3 million is somewhat arbitrary. We didn't want to take down the undesignated balance so far that in an emergency we had no dollars left. But $3 million is kind of an arbitrary number, looking to help students from from the college and the universities as they go forward.
If there are no other questions, that will conclude my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. I'd like to move to public comment portion of our agenda. We have 5 speakers who are scheduled to speak today. At this time, I'd like to turn over the mic to Samantha Norton to manage our public comment.
Thank you, Chair Guay. All of our speakers are going to be joining us virtually today. Our first speaker is Professor Williams with Central Connecticut State University and also president of AAUP. Professor Williams, do you have your 3 minutes ready?
I do. Thank you.
You may begin.
Good morning. As most of you know, I'm Louise Williams, president of CSU AAUP. I'm speaking to you today about the serious danger our colleges and universities are facing because of the recent actions of the Trump administration. I know you're aware of this, but I wanted to make sure you heard the faculty viewpoint on it. Although Trump's so-called Compact for Excellence in Higher Education has been rejected by almost all of the 9 universities to which he first offered it, he now is extending it to other institutions. So our system could be next to have to consider it or something similar. I hope you've thought about what you will advise our presidents to respond to Trump's extortion now or in the future. From the CSU AUP perspective, to sign an agreement such as this one is to compromise the autonomy of our institutions and the academic freedom that is essential to higher education. It also will make us complicit with an unconstitutional and illegal directive that undermines democratic principles and the rights of all citizens. This compact makes federal funding conditional on higher education institutions agreeing to do certain things. I will list just 10 of them. To receive federal funding, colleges and universities can no longer participate in efforts to improve diversity. They must limit the admission of international students. They must accept the definition of sex and gender according to rigid binaries. They have to recognize that academic freedom is not absolute and regulate what faculty, staff, and students say and do. They must change existing internal governance structures and faculty hiring practices so that conservative political viewpoints are represented within every field, department, school, and teaching unit. They will have to streamline or eliminate academic programs that the Trump administration believes fails to serve students. They will have to transform or abolish institutional units that belittle conservative ideas. They will have to prohibit university employees speaking or acting about current societal and political events. They will have to prohibit and punish individuals or groups that are hostile to the United States or its values or part of what the current federal government designates as terrorist organizations. Finally, colleges and universities must commit to the use of force to stop student or faculty protests on campus. This form of government interference in higher education eliminates the academic freedom that is essential to the research, teaching, and learning that saves lives, creates a highly skilled workforce, and develops an engaged citizenry. Even worse, it will embolden Trump to do more to restrict free speech for political purposes for everyone in the United States. CSU AUP faculty expect that you will reject this compact and any other similar form of government intrusion into higher education. We also expect our colleges and universities not to practice any form of anticipatory compliance based on the hope that they can fly under the radar of a federal government which demands this kind of subservience. We expect that you will commit to using system office reserves and you will lobby the legislature for financial help to make up for any federal retaliation for not agreeing to their interference. We also expect CSU AAP to be included in your new HR 1 committee about which we have heard nothing. This is a time for courage, not capitulation. The future of education, free speech, and democracy is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Williams. Our next speaker is Deborah Watson with Charter Oak State College. Deborah, are you able to check your audio and video for me, please?
On.
Deborah, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you not hear me?
We can hear you. You sound great. Do you have your 3 minutes ready?
I do.
All right, you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Guay, Regents, and others at the table today. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Debbie Watson, and I was born, raised, and educated in Connecticut's public schools, including my 2 degrees from Central. I've been deeply fortunate to build 2 fulfilling careers as an educator within Connecticut's system spanning over 50 years. From public education for over 37 years in Hartford and Bridgeport as a teacher and an administrator, I'm now in higher ed. I was invited to join a small team at Charter Oak to begin the ARC program, and that's where I remain today. Thank you for the raise granted last year. It was my first in 18 years of service. That recognition has been a great first step. My task today is to share the context of our current and proposed compensation and why equity remains a concern. With the raise, adjunct faculty at Charter Oak are paid $82 an hour or per credit, or $246 per student for a 3-credit course. With 10 students, that works out to $2,460. This past summer, I only had 3 students, so for 8 weeks of work, I only was paid $1,053. I typically, depending of course on the class size, devote 25 to 30 hours a week in mathematics. I have grading of 26 assignments, weekly announcements. I participate in discussions and provide individual feedback, and it comes out to around 240 hours per course, again, depending on enrollment. And that doesn't consider complex assignments. Like last week, I had to grade an assignment that took me 50 hours because I have 20 students. Comparing our wages to, all of that averages about between $10 and $12 an hour. By comparison, Connecticut's minimum wages, you know, is $16.35. So we're not even meeting minimum wage in Connecticut. If we were to take the $16.35 an hour and times it times hours worked, it would be about $3,900. Our union has requested a base pay of $4,000 per course for classes with 5 or more students. That figure primarily benefits for teaching classes of 5 to 16 students. But for me, lately, I've had 20, 25 students. So at $4,000, it would be a loss. But for the 5 to 16 students, it's a benefit. I was department head at another college in Connecticut in 2018, and I was already paying my faculty $4,000 a course. My entire professional life has been dedicated to equity, dignity, and respect for students, families, colleagues, and communities. Today, I'm advocating for fairness with our own system. Here working at Charter Oak, and just looking at those great numbers that were presented earlier.
Apologies, Deborah, but if you're able to start wrapping up your remarks as we're at the 3-minute mark, that would be great.
Okay, I'm just asking and respectfully requesting support from the regents to support the union's request for the $4,000 flat rate. Thank you for your time and consideration and all the work you do for Connecticut learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Our next speaker is Kashana Hector Levy with Charter Oak State College. Kashana, are you able to check your audio and video for me, please?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Do you have your 3 minutes ready?
Yes.
All right, you may begin.
Good morning, all. My name is Kashana Hector Levy. I'm a proud Hartford resident and adjunct professor at Charter Oak State College since 2022. I joined Charter Oak with a deep commitment to advancing healthcare education. I helped design and launch a newly accredited cancer registry management certificate program, which was a rigorous and high-quality curriculum that prepares students to become nationally accredited oncology data specialists. This was not an easy task. The board exam is difficult, and most candidates do not pass on their first attempt. But with strong faculty, guidance, and mentorship, our students are rising to the challenge. In fact, we recently celebrated our first student passing the ODS exam, a milestone that speaks volume about the quality of instruction and dedication of our adjunct faculty. This brings me to why I'm here today, to advocate for fair compensation for adjunct professors who make these successes possible. We are educators, mentors, and subject experts. We build programs, shape futures, and uphold academic integrity for Charter Oak, yet our compensation barely is above minimum wage. We have unionized because we believe in equality, not just for our students, but for ourselves. We are asking for a wage increase that reflects our expertise, the cost of living, and to support the expansion of Charter Oak's academic programs. A minimum of $4,000 to teach a course with 5 students is not excessive. It's reasonable, fair, and overdue. I speak not only as a faculty member, but as a mom of 4 boys. My youngest is in high school, and my third son, Mikkel, dreams of becoming a pilot. Flight school is expensive. Like many adjuncts, I teach not only to serve my students, but to support my family. Fair compensation would allow me and others like me to continue to do both. We are asking for respect and recognition for wages that honors our work and the work that we do and the lives that we help transform. Thank you for your time and your consideration of the real impact of your decision, not just on faculty, but the students and family we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashana. Our next public speaker is Erica Dawson-Head with Central Connecticut State University. Erica, are you able to check your audio and video for me, please?
This is Erica. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you. Do you have your 3 minutes ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Erica. As was said before, I'm employed currently at UMass Amherst. I have been an adjunct for Central Connecticut State University. In my professional role, I support our university community with maintaining an inclusive and welcoming spaces that celebrate and recognize people's identities. I'm speaking today in a personal capacity as an alumnus of Central Connecticut State University and not as a representative of any organization. I was the senior class president in 2012 and a graduate of Central Connecticut State University's graduate school in 2015. I was also a part of the search committee that hired CCSU's first leader of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. President Trump's Compact for Higher Education is a document that was designed to ignore, devalue, and create barriers that sideline the needs of communities. It centers conservative political views as a core value in institutions that adopt the compact. Implementation of the compact would create an environment that works against the common good. Higher education has been used by many people from different genders, lifestyles, political backgrounds, racial, ethnic, cultural, religious, and social economic levels as a path to a more rewarding life. Pivotal to my success has been access to the Ruth Boyer Women's Center, classes in sociology, political science, history, and inclusive university spaces. They contributed to my success as a student, provided me with an understanding of the world, knowledge, self-confidence, and support I needed to be a good global community member. I am asking that you continue to protect a vision of the university that values equity, justice, and inclusion. Erasing the unique identities that we all have and creating spaces where my gender, race, and other identities that define who I am as a human must remain invisible has never been a core value of CCSU. It is important that any strategic plan reflects the strength and need for multicultural environments reflective of the identities found in our communities. It is destructive to communities when their identities are erased from documents and deemed unwelcome. As a Black woman, I and many others have overcome adversity to be seen, accepted, educated, respected, understood, and recognized. And I figured I'd stop this with a nice little lighthearted reminder because I love musical theater. And I'm gonna end this with a famous line from the musical Hamilton, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. History has its eyes on you. I thank you so much for this opportunity and your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Our last public speaker was supposed to be Fiona Pearson with Central Connecticut State University, but she has not joined the WebEx. So
Fiona is in the picture. She's right below. I see her.
my apologies. She
No
snuck
worries.
in without me noticing. All right, Fiona, do you have your 3 minutes ready and can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, sorry, you may begin.
Good morning. I'm Fiona Pearson, Professor of Sociology at CCSU. We thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. I'm here to ask quite simply what the CSCU system is doing to counter the blatant intimidation tactics of the Trump administration as outlined in their Compact for Excellence in Higher Education. On September 15th, Attorney General William Tong joined CSU AUP at CCSU and reminded our campus community that as a public university, we serve the sovereign state of Connecticut. However, currently, I am not seeing that. Our administrators at CCSU, led by President Toro and Vice President of Regulatory Affairs, Stacey Votto, are already slowly eroding our ability to address the values that have historically defined us. Note that Votto, with her new designation, VP of Regulatory Affairs, has replaced our now eliminated Vice President of Equity and Well-Being. An institutional commitment to these moral values has been disappeared in broad daylight. Further, on October 9th, the CCSU campus community received from President Toro a proposed revision of our strategic plan in which all references of inclusivity, equity, justice, culture, and diversity were deleted. And as the Trump administration would prefer, the currently proposed revisions to CCSU's proposed strategic plan will de-emphasize the role of developing critical thinking and communication skills that are at the heart of the humanities, social sciences, and justice-based disciplines, instead prioritizing tech bro-inspired innovation and the fickle and ever-changing market that most recently has left many of our coder alum unemployed due to the emerging technologies of generative AI. Yesterday, the president, in front of an overflowing room of concerned faculty, tried to defend her position, citing a concern with losing federal funding. However, I ask you, after gutting our moral center and all that allows for a vibrant exchange of ideas and experiences, what will be left for our students? Higher education is under attack because we are one of the few institutions that not only allows for, but even encourages the creation of spaces for asking difficult questions that challenge our understanding of perceived common sense, morality, and the status quo. What happens when we lose these spaces in our state and country? I ask you, what will our CSCU system do when faced with this devil's deal? Will CSCU serve the ideological agenda of our current presidential administration, in which higher education and public education, for that matter, has no role? Or will you preserve the opportunity for critical inquiry and a commitment to equity and justice for our future students? What legacy will you be leaving behind at this historic moment? Whom will you serve? I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And with that, Chair Guay, that concludes our public comment.
Thank you so kindly. I appreciate that facilitation, Samantha Norton. Any of the institutional presidents want to respond to the public comment, because some of it is clearly apropos to follow up on? Dr. Toro?
Thank you, Chair Guay. Good morning, everyone. And I think it's important for me to clarify the accusations that we just heard from a faculty member. Let me start by saying that, yes, we are revising our strategic plan, a process that started this past July because we are due to submit a progress report to NECHI in January. And that was one of the areas of focus from NECHI. However, on October 14th, we received a letter from NECHI that tells us that the areas of focus is different. And why? Because NECHI has just issued different standards. And you may know that equity, diversity, and inclusion are not areas of concern for NECHI anymore. Now they have focused and will continue to focus on the return on investment in higher education. That's an aspect that we are considering in this revision. But let me just talk about the process. I am accused that I am the one who developed the revisions. There is a revision committee I appointed on July, this past July. The committee includes the president from AUP. The committee includes the president from SWOF. The committee includes the president from the Faculty Senate. The committee includes the president of the University Planning and Budget Committee. The committee includes the faculty member who took to the Senate the graduation requirement in diversity and inclusion. Includes also administrators, definitely. But the accusation that I have put together the revisions is far from correct. There has been a committee deliberating on those changes, and we are going through a lengthy process until the Senate approves those changes. But it's important for me to clarify what's at the center of those changes. Yes, we will have changed the focus of the strategic plan to focus on student success. That's at the heart of the changes. Instead of everything else, now we are focusing on one thing, student success. Access, expanding access to higher education, and I can go through the list of all the things we are doing, and we will continue to expand and do to expand access. Improving and enhancing the educational experience we offer to the students in such a way that exactly the skills that were mentioned about critical thinking, communication skills, teamwork, and those so important skills that make higher education so important and different from high school are at the center of the plan. Finally, yes, we have an open forum full of people yesterday. And I was willing and able to answer every question that was raised there. And I commit myself to an inclusive process until we get these revisions approved. Let me say, as president of Central Connecticut State University, I am so proud to be able to support the over 11,000 students we serve. It's not my responsibility as president to support 1,000 students, 1,200 students. It's my responsibility as president to protect, to provide the opportunities and the environment to the 11,000 students we have at Central, for them, for each one of them, to achieve their full potential. If you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you are looking at a perfect example of what that means. Hispanic with a very strong accent in a field dominated by males, engineering, and a female. What else? What other dimension of diversity is stronger than the one I have mentioned? But I have a unique responsibility in these very difficult times, as I said. Provide every individual, every student we educate, the same level of opportunities. And I stand with the committee who made and recommended those changes. Are those final? No, because as I said, we are going through a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Toro. Dr. Ismaili?
You know, all institutional leaders are not the same. We have different perspectives, and we project our leadership in different ways. What I will say is that at Eastern, we've taken a different approach, and that's not to suggest that President Toro's approach is incorrect. She's the institutional leader of Central, I'm the institutional leader at Eastern. But what I will say is that this semester, I have signed on to 2 statements by the AAC&U regarding, first of all, issues around the Trump administration and its incursions into higher education, and most recently, the compact. I've also, through our engagement across campus as we develop our strategic plan, suggested that we think about having a specific focus in our strategic plan. And the strategic focus is to project and protect the values of Eastern during periods of challenge and upheaval. My view of this is that when we look back in time, we're in a moment of challenge, and that strategic plan is an artifact of this period. To not talk about the challenge of higher education that we're under would be, in my mind, a miss that from my perspective, would be difficult to explain as a leader. I think it's also important to note that as the institutional leader, I don't think it's appropriate for CSCU to advise the president of Eastern what to do and what not to do. I am the president of Eastern, and it's important to recognize that we have different perspectives. We were hired into different roles, and we serve different communities. So I think it's appropriate to sort of start to think about what those differences mean, what institutional leaders bring to the table, but also how they're understanding the community they serve. It's okay to have different views. It's okay to have because that's what we are. We're a society with different views. And as leaders, we should also be able to express them collegially, collaboratively, and maybe not come to the same outcome.
Any other comments before we move on? CFO Mike Moriarty, representing Charter Oak.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge today, in response to the comments, that there are negotiating teams actively meeting to discuss wages with our faculty and staff. And I know that all teams around the table respect and value the great work that is done. So I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate the commentary, whether it's to support or challenge us. And a lot of times the commentary both supports and challenges us to do the right thing. And so your voice is always welcome at the table. Thank you.
Dr. Bernal.
Thank you, Chair Goy. You know, I'll be really brief and say that I appreciate my colleagues' comments about the challenging and complex situations that all of our universities are in. And I appreciate the comments of our colleagues online as well for sharing their perspectives. What I would want to just reiterate that Dr. Ismaili said is the approach that the system office, and in particular you, Chancellor Maduco, in giving the campus presidents flexibility to listen to our communities, to come into conversation with our communities, and to determine our own unique pathways and how we address some of the changing dynamics around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but other measures, I think, has given us not only clear leadership on our campus, but also enables us to raise the voices and perspectives of our very diverse campus constituencies in unique ways that are really important on our campuses. And so I would just reiterate the ability to do this at a local level has really not only strengthened our leadership at the local level, but enables us to push forward with some of those really important things. For WestConn, you know, we've been asked as leadership to move forward, to double down, to continue to press. And that's what you probably see me doing when I issue statements or sign on to similar things. You will see some reorganization, but it's in a way that's going to strengthen our diversity and inclusion work. So we're going a different direction, but that was all based on our campus feedback. And being a Hispanic serving institution, you know, we estimate that we are not receiving between $7 and $9 million because of the hold in some of the Title III and Title A funding. And so our campus has asked us to think about other ways we can continue with that work despite federal funding. So we have teams working on this on our campus, but I'll just close with how I started. It's a difficult, complex environment. I mean, if you think about the job that I started in Michigan, which was the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion position, that position no longer exists there. And so there's been a big shift in how this work is being done. I'm just proud that we at WestCon are able to continue that work, and I respect my colleagues across the campuses for the way that they're handling it in partnership with their communities as well.
Yeah, you know, this has been, as you can tell, as you can hear it in the sentiments and voices of our presidents and to our colleagues during the public comment, you know, we are facing challenging times. And I'm not a binary individual in terms of thinking one way or the other, right? It's gray and it's blended and it's layered and it's nuanced. The one thing I can say on behalf of the CSU system is at no point have our presidents been directed to comply or to pivot in any way because they have the autonomy to lead their institutions. But I also want to mention in no way has there been a directive or discussions to censor the academic freedom that's bestowed upon all faculty or for any member of the administration to encroach on their learning environment. That is the domain of our faculty, and we will stand by our faculty as it relates to how they teach and how they deem they want to deliver the curriculum and pedagogy. And we are huge stewards and proponents of academic freedom across our campuses where students and employees alike can speak freely, even when it's difficult for us to hear. But I need everyone to understand the difficult positions that not only our 6 institutional presidents are facing, but every president in higher education right now, where we are between a rock and a hard place in terms of adhering and upholding the values and the missions of our institutions, but also not compromising the very resources that our institutions rely on to operate. As a public higher ed system of colleges and universities, we are heavily subsidized. And we have 2 forms of funding, both federal and at the state level. And on a given day, our presidents have to make the judgment call on how to manage and mitigate and engage, right? And it is insane. I back our presidents, all of them. I back their leadership. I back their diverse and lived experiences. But what I'm asking our faculty and staff to do is, and students, continue speaking up, continue voicing your concerns, your ideas, but also understand that we have to work together during a very difficult time, right? But again, the mission of learning at the highest levels of our system, but also our impact and our servitude to the people of Connecticut, right, remains. We are the most accessible, affordable, and diverse system and collection of institutions in the state of Connecticut, hands down, right? Judge us on our actions, judge us on our outcomes, and judge us on what we continue to do, despite what's going on both at the federal and state level. So I commend President Toro and Ismaili and Royal and Klonowski and Bulmer, and there's others I'm forgetting because my memory is losing. You know, Burnell, yes. And there might be 2 others, but again, they are doing tremendous work. And we ask our faculty, or ask our union leaders, partner with us, but understand we're facing an existential threat. Chair Guay.
Thanks to everyone for sharing their ideas, perspectives, and experiences in this moment. I will, as a point of clarification, let everyone know that there is no contract or charter in front of CSCU to sign or agree to or to read. So we don't have anything in front of us right now. If and when we do, we'll let you know.
Chair Guai?
Yes, Regent
Yes.
Sasanker, the floor is
It's
yours.
fine. Thanks. I mean, just as chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee, I mean, most of what we think about is, not most of, but a lot of what we think about is shared governance. And I'm hearing this conversation, just wanted to put some things, perhaps questions out there that don't necessarily need to be answered right now, but also really commend the attitude that's being taken by the board, by the system, to allow this sort of institutional autonomy I see the diversity of attitudes that are being taken by institutional leaders, and I think that's, and even just this conversation here is so healthy, and there have been points, I think, in our system where that was not available to us, and it's such a difficult moment to navigate. I'm seeing the differences in leadership styles, and it's wonderful to see in both directions, actually. But I do want to just ask a couple of things, because I am hearing my colleagues at the board level airing concerns that are very much shared governance issues at the institutional level. So just want to put a couple questions out there. Again, I don't need answers now, but these are the concerns that come to mind given my struggles at different times in my institution for shared governance. And one is just that it was noted that we have our union leadership and governance, faculty governance leaders were also at the table in this committee. But one of the things I want to make sure is that very often these things are attributed or represented as the product of shared governance. But when those folks are a vast minority, where they could not necessarily make a difference in the vote, that's not always the case. So I'm just curious about how big the committee is. Again, at another time could be discussed. But the other thing is that what I also heard was that it seems right that this is still under discussion at the Senate level, and that it will continue to be under discussion so that there is a shared governance process in place. But I also heard that the changes have already been made on the website and at the institution. So I'm curious about that. And again, maybe we'll talk about that at FEC. We'll talk about that in the future. But just want to make sure, again, at every single level, when threats of this magnitude are among us, we cannot let shared governance go on any level, because that's precisely, the problem. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say, to make sure that we are monitoring that. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Professor Sasanker. Appreciate everyone's comments. I'd like to now move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 25th board meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Porth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. The September 25th board minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the consent agenda. There are 5 items before us. I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Professor Sasanker. I'd like to, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda is approved. I'd like to now turn the floor over to Regent Ira Bloom. Chair Ira Bloom, I understand you have a report and that the action items have been taken care of on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of what I've said, I think we've already heard. So I was going to make a few additional comments about the significance of the changes in the nursing program at Eastern, but I think we pretty much heard it. It is a very important program for that part of the state, and the changes that were approved on consent have to do primarily with the changes that have been made by the accrediting agencies that accredit the nursing programs, as well as adopting the program to Eastern's new liberal arts core. So other than that, I thank you for the opportunity and for comment.
Thank you so much, Regent Bloom. You really do a great job leading our Academic and Student Affairs Committee, and I know everyone on the board appreciates you and how you do things, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Audit Committee, Chair Elise Wright, I understand we have no report this meeting?
That's correct.
Thank you so kindly. Finance and Infrastructure Committee, Chair Richard Balducci, I'll turn this over to you. I understand you have a report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Finance Committee met on October 15th, and it was a long, informative meeting, and Dr. Blanchard did a great job explaining two pieces of it that took time, the enrollment piece and the system office reserves. One of the things that we're going to do is freeze tuition for 2026 and the mandatory fees. However, we have a couple of fees that may need special fees, which Dr. Blanchard will explain, along with the 2 resolutions for Central and the 3 resolutions for Western at this time. Dr. Blanchard?
Thank you, Chair Balducci. Let me get my slide presentation to those slides. Okay, thank you. Good morning again. As the chair said, we are not proposing increases in tuition for academic year 26-27, nor are we proposing any changes in the mandatory fees. However, we do face increased costs. And so the institutions are proposing a select few number of fees that they'd like to see increased to cover those increased costs, starting with the food service fees. The food service fees are, when students live on campus, they pay their fees for their residential, their room, and they also pay for their board. The food service fees represent the board. You can see on the screen, each of our universities have different fees because they have different food service contracts supporting their residential students. You'll see that what the fee is in the current fiscal year. You'll see what the fee is proposed to be for the next fiscal year, FY27. The changes are as follows. Central Connecticut State University is proposing a $196 increase, which represents a 3.5% increase. Eastern Connecticut State University is proposing a $204 increase in its food service fees, which represents a 2.9% increase. Southern Connecticut State University is proposing a $272 increase in its food service fees, a 3.9% increase. And finally, Western Connecticut State University is proposing a $300 increase, which represents a 4.3% increase. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you wanted to vote on this first before we moved on to the others?
I do, and I would just make a comment, and I'd ask the chair to consider maybe doing a one bid for all 4 universities where we might be able to save money. It's a thought to throw out. You and I had chatted about this, but maybe to consider doing that type of a program or a commitment.
I think we should let our institutional presidents decide how we do this, but I think there's some wisdom in how Central may be doing this versus some others. So maybe there's some learnings internally that we can capitalize on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And therefore, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution for the 4 university increases in their food service program. Is there a second?
I'd ask the regents to hold down their mic when they're voting so we get some clarity with the online.
I'll second that.
All those, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's adopted. Moving right along, Dr. Blanchard.
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I should have also gone through the Tier 2 fees. Let me go through the Tier 2 fees, and you can decide whether that vote will maintain for the Tier 2 fees in addition to the food service fees. So Tier 2 fees are fees associated with costs tied to specific programs or specific services. You'll see on the slide proposals for fee increases for Central and Southern and Western. You'll see for Central Connecticut State University, they are proposing a new fee of $300 for their Doctor of Nurse Anesthesia Practice program, the DNAP program. Central is also proposing a BSN lab fee, increase in that fee of $125 for their full-time BSN students and $13 for their part-time BSN students. You'll see on the screen what that fee currently is and what that fee would be if you approve the increase. Southern Connecticut State University is proposing new fees for its Bachelor of Social Work program, for its Master of Social Work program, as well as for the Occupational Therapy program. You'll see on the screen that these are all new fees. These fees are covering costs associated with each of these programs. Many times these programs are dealing with expensive medical equipment, simulation equipment, virtual reality type equipment, which is kind of the new way of supporting these sorts of programs, as well as consumables, such as needles and other consumables that can only be used once and are discarded immediately for safety reasons, and they have to continue to be refreshed semester after semester, class after class. And so these costs, these fees, would cover those costs on a per semester basis per student. Southern is also proposing an orientation fee, which it currently is at $150. They're proposing to increase that fee to $200, which, by the way, is consistent with at least 2 other universities within our system at $200. Again, each of our universities are seeking to improve their services for their students, particularly for their new students, and so this increase will support additional activities that improve the experiences of those incoming students. Western Connecticut State University is proposing a new fee of $50 for its education and music education technology program. And Western is also proposing a $5 increase in its $15 fee to $20 to cover the costs of replacing lost IDs, also consistent with the other universities within our system. And finally, though this is only an informational item, as per board resolution previously, when the credit card vendor charges us additional fees, we are allowed to increase those fees to match what we are being charged. So we are currently being charged, we were charged 2.95%. In May, those fees increased to 3%. We are increasing our fees across the board to cover that small increase. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want to vote again on this particular set?
I do.
Okay.
Unless we can vote on it as a whole, as whole Tier 2 fees, unless somebody would like to discuss or pull one out and discuss it separately, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Secretary Bufkin.
Yes, the resolution that was before you covered both the Tier 2 fees and the, as well as the backup materials provided that, as well as the freezing of tuition and the increase in food service fees. So it does cover all 3 of these.
So there's no need for
I would
us to-
think, Chair Balducci, that unless anyone has an issue with Tier 2, the first vote survives. So the question is, does anyone have an issue with the Tier 2 fees to relitigate it?
So the motion moves, is carried under both. Thank you very much, Counselor. Dr. Blanchard, the Central and Western resolutions,
Yes,
which we
my
have
apologies
already
on the
approved several already in the consent calendar.
That's correct. First of all, I believe Chancellor Maduka would like to offer comments?
Yeah,
Or
I just want to
Chair Glay?
clarify, the vote that the board took, so everyone online understands also, because we're pretty clear in the room, that Finance Chair Balducci asked for the vote. It included the food service fees, it included the tuition fees, it included the Tier 2 fees, which have all been provided to everyone in the public information. We took the vote before the Tier 2 fees were expanded upon, but we certainly had access to all of them. We then presented them through the good office of CFO Lloyd Blanchard, and then everyone agreed that we were good with the Tier 2 fees, so the initial vote survives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, my apology for the confusion.
It's quite all right. It's fun to explain, Lloyd.
I'll make more mistakes, so I'll give you that opportunity some more. So Chair Balducci asked me to present also the resolutions on partnership agreements. As the chair said, this board has approved on a pilot basis a number of partnership agreements to give the opportunity, give the universities and colleges opportunities to work with their community partners to support additional enrollments at their institutions. So what we present before you today, I believe, will take place in two votes. First are the two partnership agreements that Central Connecticut State is bringing to the board for your approval. The first one is Hanwha Aerospace USA for the current academic year, and Advanced Behavioral Care, LLC. These partnership agreements with Central Connecticut State also apply to the current academic year. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Before we move for a vote on Central's items, I would just say this is a great program that's being started and being used by our universities to expand and involve the community in which they serve and the surrounding communities. So I think this is a real positive thing that we're doing for the universities and for the communities. With that, I would ask or make the motion to adopt the resolution for Central's two items for approval.
Chair Balducci, I'd like to make a recommendation if you'd so consider it. We have in our agenda these five items on the screen as two separate resolutions, and I would ask if you could, if possible, bundle those resolutions as one vote.
I would bundle them if there is no issue with anyone, with any of those five resolutions.
I believe you would need a motion to bundle them.
I would like a motion to bundle them because I think this is terrific work done by two of our leaders, so I'd make a motion that we bundle them.
I would even second that motion, Mr. Chairman. It makes the whole process much easier. So with that, I would make a motion that we adopt the resolution for the two Central and the three Western programs.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think the vote is to bundle all five, and then I can present the Western partnership agreements.
All right, go ahead, Lloyd.
Okay. So if we are going to bundle them, I will continue with the remaining proposals for partnership agreements. All three.
Sorry, Chair, CFO Lloyd, just real quick, I think Ira is trying to ask a question.
Oh.
Sorry. Regent Bloom.
Thank you. I had some difficulty with some of these, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. These are partial tuition fee waivers, and I think it's important from my perspective, at least as a regent, that I understand what backs up or what supports these waivers. In other words, what the benefits are to the system to waive part of the tuition. And I would request that we not bundle them. I'm sorry, I hate to disagree with my chair, for whom I have great respect, but they may present different issues depending on the circumstances. There's more detail here, for example, in Western's presentations and how they're explaining the revenue, the recoupment and the increase of revenue than there was initially from Central. So, given the board's responsibility for tuition and fees, for setting tuition and fees, I would at least bundle the items coming from one campus and then a separate vote on the items coming from the other campus. But I think it's important before the board waives partial tuition that we understand what the gains are here.
I can speak to that if you like, Mr. Chair.
First of all, there's a motion, I think, on the floor to bundle. So somebody has to rescind that motion.
That would be me. The chair will rescind the bundle motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we can discuss, and you can go ahead and through that explanation, Dr. Blanchard.
Thank you. If I understood the concern, it's the sort of rationale behind providing 5% discounts to these partners. I think it's important to understand that in higher education, any institution, most institutions are quite large, and they can only be efficient through being large to take advantage of economies of scale. In economic terms, which is my academic training, there is almost zero marginal cost in adding an additional student once you are providing a class, and we provide thousands of them. Zero marginal costs, positive marginal revenue in each one of these cases. So a 5% discount is attractive when it comes to attracting new students. And these partnership agreements provide us with the opportunity, our institutional leaders, with an opportunity to work with their communities, work with their community businesses, the chambers of commerce, and other institutions, nonprofit organizations and the like, to give their employees an opportunity to take coursework from our institutions. And so by providing this 5% discount, it takes nothing away from us, but it adds 95% of the tuition they would pay. And so I think the important point here is that there is little cost added to these agreements, but there is revenue added without those little costs. In economics, that's positive marginal revenue and near zero marginal costs. So that would explain the rationale for these, and I think the concern is a valid one, and it's why the board has chosen to pass these, so far, 12 programs on a pilot basis until Secretary Bufkin's working group can study these programs so that we can show the board the benefits in hard numbers.
Thank you, Dr. Toro.
I should add that in the case, beside what CFO Blanchard has mentioned, in the case of the aerospace company, that agreement deserves more an opportunity to share more information with the board. This partnership has been going on for a number of years now. The company recently donated $200,000 to Central for the naming of our aerospace mechanical engineering lab. In addition to that, as we speak, and the commitment is that after these students, 7 students from engineering are doing their internships with the company, and the commitment is that for the near future, they are going to have 7 positions for our students to do their internship at the company. Finally, this partnership has been used as an example by Advanced CT to be able to bring additional businesses to Connecticut, because this is a perfect example of what academia and the private industry can do together. 5% for reduction in tuition for 2 students will be $577 altogether. If we have only 2 students enroll as a result of this agreement. For that investment, if you would like to see that as an investment, the $577, we will get $10,967. That is only with 2 students. But we are expecting up to 20 students. So for 20 students, our investment will be $5,771, and we will be getting in tuition $109,668. I am assuming that even though higher education is not a business, in any business, this could be a nice investment because we will get our return on that small investment. The same is true with advanced behavioral care. This is a small company that is working closely with our new College of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, and the same math apply here. So it's about providing not only this specific tuition reduction, but this is to build up a strong relationship with the companies that will benefit our students and our institution, and maybe our state as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ari, I understand
Yes.
you have a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, President Toro said mostly what I was going to say, so I won't step on that other than to say that I think in addition to the business benefits of it and the economics that CFO Blanchard talked about, I think this also helps support our mission to engage students all across the state of Connecticut, wherever they are. So this is an opportunity to get our name out through people in the workforce who are looking to improve their position, gain more education. It opens us up to get marketing inside these organizations. And once these 2 to 20 students have success, we can gain additional students down the line. So tremendous work by Central and Western.
Thank you, Ari. Don?
Thank you. I just want to thank Regent Ira Bloom for asking for greater explanation, because I think it was very productive. We see that this makes a whole lot of sense in terms of the tuition reduction as a matter of economics, working to the advantage of our state university and college system. But I think we also see that it works very well in facilitating partnerships with business and industry and being responsive to their needs that in turn helps our students with more jobs in Connecticut.
Thank you. Any other comments by any other? Rick?
Super quick, to build on what Don was just saying, I really think that this is an innovative way to build more pipelines. I think it's going to help us with enrollment, and it serves our basic mission to prepare workers, to prepare people to fill jobs in the state of Connecticut. So.
And I'm hopeful that the other universities will continue to grow and come up with these types of programs. Oh, Kelly.
Thank you, and thank you, President Toro, for your leadership on this really amazing initiative. One of the things that we hear from our businesses repeatedly is not only do we need a college degree, but we need experience to go with it. And the only way for our students to gain this experience is by really meaningful work-based learning experiences while they're still in school. So these types of internships are really vital to ensure that our students are getting placed. These partnerships provide pathways for our students to end up working in those organizations that they had those internships with. And I think the really innovative part of this is having employees from these organizations participating in these classrooms brings real applied learning opportunities to the real world situations that these companies are facing, because they have these students that are bringing that experience with them into the discourse and conversation within the learning environment. So I applaud this opportunity and really hope that it's looked at as a best practice model.
Thank you, Kelly. Further comments by anybody? If not, I want to just clarify the motion that we have. It's to bundle the 2 central proposals?
I think Regent
So moved.
Casamento wants to say something. We have trouble seeing the hands up in the room.
Thank you, and I really appreciate everybody's comments. I want to just highlight that these kinds of work opportunities for our students will become even more important with the federal requirements that will be measuring how our students' income in the future compares with individuals that didn't have this particular opportunity. And then the last thing I'll just highlight is often some of the relationships, at least this was the case when I was at Central, is coupled with these organizations actually subsidizing a portion of these educational endeavors. So that partnership and access, along with the tuition benefit that the organization is offering, also creates efficiencies in terms of how hard it is to sometimes collect tuition and fees from students. So there's, some nuances in terms of operational enhancements that more likely than not offset the discount when you're talking about advertising and access and what it takes to collect a dollar from a student, especially in tough economic times. Thank you.
Regent Bloom, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely support what people have said. My problem here was the initial versions of a few of these proposals did not include what these versions do. When we have a real commitment from the employer side, I think or the receiving institution side, I think this is great. I think what we have to do in each of these resolutions is just to assure ourselves of what we've just heard, that these institutions are committed. We have, in some of the earlier versions, the language said that the institution had no commitment to do anything. And that was what was troubling me. I think I'm a great advocate of internships and this kind of experience. I ran a whole series of internship programs in one of my former lives. So this is all, but I just want, my concern here is that we assure ourselves that each of the proposals has these components. I'm now happy to vote for all of them.
Thank you, Ira. Further comments? I just think it's a great idea and a great program where we combine education with the actual physical involvement with business for our students as we move forward. Now, I would also reiterate the motion to combine the two central proposals for a vote as we move forward. Counselor?
Do we have the motion? Is the motion on the floor?
No, we can do 5 votes. Why don't we do the 5 votes? That makes it nice and simple, nice and clean, and we can go through this process and we can finish this business with the Finance Committee today before we go to dinner.
This, as a point of information, this sounds like the Department of Redundancy Department.
With that, I would move forward the first central proposal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Made and seconded. Further discussion on it? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted. Moving to the second central proposal. Is there discussion? Made a motion, excuse me. Do I need a second? Thank you, Rich.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Discussion on it. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution's adopted. Moving right along to Western. The first item with the Danbury Chamber, discussion. Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution's adopted. Second item, dealing with the new town savings bank at Western. Motion made, I make it, second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution's adopted. And the last item, dealing with Ives Bank at Western, I was make a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded, thank you. Excuse me, was that a second?
Yes.
Okay, motion made and seconded, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Those take care of the items. I return it back to you.
Thank you so kindly. Next, our Chair and Governance and Nomination Committee, Juanita James, is absent today. But Regent Porth, I understand you have a report and action item.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is on behalf of Juanita James, as you just said, and the Governance and Nomination Committee. We met on October 14th and with two items on the agenda. The first one had to do with our ongoing review of various committee charters, and we agreed at this particular meeting that no revisions were necessary to the committee charter for governance and nominating. The item that's on your agenda for action today is the second item we dealt with, which has to do with CSCU's contracting and signatory authority policy. And this is the nominating committee endorsed this policy recommendation unanimously and wants to put it in front of you today for formal adoption of the full Board of Regents. But before we do that, I'd like to call on Chief Compliance Officer Cameron Liston to provide an overview for us on what's in here and why this is such an important vote.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Regent Porth, and good afternoon, Regents, Chancellor, and Presidents. I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and kind of discuss the updated CSU contracting and signatory authority policy with you all for your consideration. Get this to move. All right. By way of background, we currently have a signature authority policy under BOR 5-01. It's a very broad delegation of authority to the Chancellor, Presidents, and CFOs. Board of Regents pre-approval is only required for agreements, so it's structurally changed the system. As you can see, that doesn't give a lot of insight to the Board of Regents or oversight to the Board of Regents in really substantial contracting going on at the institutions. This updated policy before you today enhances our controls around it and provides additional insight and oversight for the Board of Regents as we undertake these substantial contracts at the institutions. This policy itself was primarily drafted by the General Counsel's Office and the Office of Compliance. It was reviewed by the Chancellor, President's System Office Executive Staff, System Office and Institutional Procurement Leads, Institutional CFOs, Policy Committee Presidential Designees, Policy Committee System Office Designees, Compliance General Counsel, and the Board of Regents Governance and Nominations Committee. All substantive feedback was incorporated. During the feedback process, we were really interested in the impact of a policy like this, how many contracts were going to fall under the certain tiers we've now outlined for Board of Regents oversight and review. And with that feedback, we did make some changes throughout this process, but the policy in front of you today is the policy that was reviewed by the Governance and Nominations Committee. So what we introduce in this updated policy is Board of Regents approval and review thresholds. We also centralize contract administration in the Office of General Counsel, and delegation is now based on subject matter rather than broad delegation to all institutional leaders. The first threshold we discuss in the policy is valued between $1 million and $2.5 million, and what we're talking about is total value. So a 5-year contract with a total value over $1 million falls into this category. It must be executed by 2 properly designated individuals, and after execution, it must be presented to the Board of Regents for review. These would be informational items. So you would have a sense of the contracting that's going on at institutions, but it wouldn't necessarily slow down the adoption of these contracts or the execution of these contracts. The contracts that will now require Board of Regents approval are contracts over $2.5 million, and these are all ORs. Any contract that falls into any of these categories are now subject to Board of Regents approval. So contracts over $2.5 million, or appointment of independent auditors, real property transactions, so real estate buying and selling property, collective bargaining agreements, mergers, acquisitions, and closures, contracts impacting tuition fees, and debt instruments that are tied to mortgages or other similar products. And what you'll notice here is a lot of these categories were retained by the Board of Regents historically, but it was never written down that these were authorities that were retained by the Board of Regents. So this policy now centralizes all of that authority and retains that authority to the Board of Regents. So it also acts as a primary delegation document. In the document, it designates authority to the chancellor, presidents, and CFOs to execute contracts on behalf of the institutions, their respective institutions. It also extends limited delegation to the General Counsel's office for all contracts that support or further the legal interests of the CSCU. This policy also introduces a more formalized redelegation structure. The chancellor and each institutional president have the authority to redelegate the authority that you are delegating to them in this policy. The delegation must be specific to the employee's position, so their job responsibilities and the work that they do on behalf of their institution or the system. It must be delegated in an appropriate amount, and it must be consistent with further standards that will be developed by the General Counsel in the general administration of this policy. The redelegation must be documented, signed, and on file with the General Counsel's office. And that's important because at times we have been asked who has the authority to sign documents for CSCU or for an individual institution, and it's not always a clear answer as to where those delegations have gone and where they've landed. So the General Counsel has some obligations in this policy, and those obligations are to develop the procedures to implement this policy that allows for the administration of our contracting, allows us to know what contracts are out there, allows us to review contracts to ensure that any efficiencies that may be gained across interinstitutional agreements can be realized by the system. The General Counsel will also publicly post a list of redelegations and annually present on the subject to the Board of Regents. It's important that folks doing business with the CSCU or any of our institutions know that the person they're signing a contract with has the authority to do so. So making this publicly available is a really important step for transparency and for trustworthiness in engaging in business with CSCU or any of the institutions. And I appreciate that. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Cameron? If not, I'd like to call for a motion to.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
So just wanted to understand, so this is saying that for any agreement under 2.5 million, an institution president of their own accord could then sign that agreement on their own. Is that what we're saying here? I just want to try and understand if I understand this delegation of authority correctly.
But for the other exceptions that require board approval. So the tuition and fee agreements require board approval regardless of the dollar amount. So that is just any subject matter over 2.5 comes to Board of Regents for pre-approval. The other categories are not subject to the value of the contract. Those are just the subject matter.
Understood. So to go back, the outside of the ones below, anything under the impact of less than $2.5 million could be signed by the president on their own accord.
Correct.
Got it. And what was the current, and currently there was just nothing.
There was no limit.
It was unlimited. Got it.
Regent Santiago, thanks for your question. I think there was a really, as Cameron Liston said, there was really a lot of feedback. There was a lot of interaction, a lot of tension in terms of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and where, you know, when I was in some of these discussions and some of these forums, where we landed on that particular moment, the 2.5 million is, you know, should it be 2.5, 1.5, 2, you know, we will assess this and we will stay close to it going forward, and we reserve the right to amend it going forward. So the chancellor knows, the institutional presidents know that we're kind of watching this, and that we'll look to assess this going forward. I don't know if there's a perfect number to land on, but we're going to land on this, and then we're going to iterate if needed.
Since we're I think having a slight back and forth, hopefully you won't mind if I just take the opportunity to ask a follow-up.
Of course.
Where did the number come from? Anywhere or rationale in particular? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the number in our review was, we were looking at the totality of contracts that would be subject to this. And so we were trying to balance operational efficiency and, the governance requirements of the Board of Regents. When we pulled the numbers, and this isn't going to be on an annual basis, but the total number of active contracts that are now subject to either Board of Regents review or approval is over 150 contracts at the system. We were looking at the institutional level, how many this was maybe going to be annually, and at the $2.5 million number, we were looking at about a dozen per institution, potentially falling into that range. Of course, depending on the year, the number of large contracts we're signing is going to be with the contract cycle itself. But it is a substantial number that will end up being here, and we didn't want to overwhelm the board's agenda with approvals for contracts, for regular business. But it also gives the additional oversight for those over 1 million so that we can track the substance of those and see if the policy needs to be reviewed to either incorporate additional subject matter for Board of Regents approval or to change that threshold.
Thanks, Cameron. I think Ira has his hand raised as well.
Thank you. I just want to add something because we looked at the space between 1 million and 2.5 million. And I think one of the key, and I think Cameron mentioned this, the key elements of the new policy is that the university's general counsel will review the contracts in that range. In the range between 1 and 2.5 million. So there will be, in addition to the reporting element, which I think has an important prophylactic impact, before somebody wants to do something strange and unusual, they'll know that the board is going to see it. But also the fact that our general counsel will review it prior to this, I think adds in that range adds an important control here.
Thanks, Ira. And are there any other questions? Just
You
to
have
put
another
this,
hand. You have Regent Casamento's hand is up.
Regent
Thank
Casamento.
you. So as a person for 10 years, executed contracts on behalf of Central, I want to highlight, I'm all for transparency, as evidenced by my never-ending questions. But I would ask for some reconsideration of whether or not it's in the system's interest to post publicly the folks that are executing contracts. I think that's a security risk. And I would ask for you to, before doing that, and I will say that people can figure out, people that are bad actors can figure out who the person is that's signing, because many of these documents become public. But at least they're having to work for it. I received, as the CFO at Central, probably every single week, some kind of bad actor phishing attempt. So it's really more about one particular component of the policy, but I would really ask for you to rethink that particular element. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Are you proposing to amend this policy at this point? Or do you want, or can we?
I don't think.
That would be my recommendation, but I'm not sure.
You don't have the, yeah.
Ex officio
You can recommend,
member,
but you can't
I could
propose,
make
yeah.
that. I'm recommending the board consider that, but leave it up to you as to whether you.
I'm happy to jump in on. Happy to jump in on that and say that I think it is a good idea. We live in a world where, the opportunity to do nefarious things is only ever increasing and with greater ease. And so posting sort of who the financial control people are and whose name you have to fake to get someone to do some financial malfeasance is suboptimal. So if it is something we could change, I would support that change.
I think we could take this back to the governance, and now I think that my recommendation would be to approve it as is today, and that the governance and nomination committee be asked to consider a proposed amendment along the lines that were just discussed. Because at this point, I think we need to add to the controls that we have. And then, but as I think Cameron said, this is going to be, we're going to be continually reviewing this. So, there will be, I suspect, other recommendations or suggestions as we see how this moves. But, I think the security issue is a serious one nowadays. So I think the committee can take it back and look at that issue for a proposed amendment to this in the future.
Thank you, Ira. I think Chancellor Maduco has some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Committee Chair Bloom. I would, or Porth, I'm sorry. I would just want to remind, our regents that at our first board meeting of the fiscal year, I had shared our efforts to stand up a transparency advisory council for CSCU, recognizing that as a system we have faced challenges as it relates to our credibility and questions about our transparency. So I think there's an opportunity, obviously, the board to determine how to implement and execute what has been proposed. But these are questions. And I think there's a consensus that can be made in terms of the security risk, but also making it public and easily accessible to the general public, the various agreements and contracts that we do execute across the system. I do think that is important as we on the road to building back the trust that has been eroded in some aspects across the state.
Trying to synthesize all the comments that have been made, it's my understanding at this point that there, I hope, is general consensus around the idea of voting on the policy as presented and continuing to review it, especially with regard to security concerns. Is that accurate? Okay, I think we have we've coalesced around an approach to this. I'll just finish this discussion by saying, once again, what Cameron reported, this replaces a policy where there were really no limits or no detailed guidelines on how we would do this. That's number one. We need this. It leverages the skills and the leadership of our institutional leaders, and that's an important thing that we want to do at this stage. And I think a couple other speakers have alluded to that, and that's an important part of this. And we've agreed to review this on a regular basis, at least annually. So that's what's behind all this. And based on the discussion, I think we can move forward, call for a motion to adopt the policy as recommended.
Regent Porth, my hand has been up. I just want a quick comment.
Sure, please.
Sure. So I acknowledge the security issues, but I just want to say how grateful I was for the recommendation that those contractors are posted and all of the transparency that comes with this kind of policy, transparency and review. I think a list of contractors is something that we have asked for at FAC and other groups before and never received. So I think given the amount of public money that flows through other hands, the transparency should be prioritized. And yes, the security should be taken into consideration, but as was noted, bad actors are going to do the work. And I think the public has a right to know really with minimal effort where our money is going. So just want to ask that we prioritize that also. We weigh both issues because it has been a concern for a while.
Thank you, Regent Sisenker. And I think Regent Casamento has her hand up.
I just want to clarify, I have no objection or concerns with the posting of the contracts. My issue is putting putting on that transparency website who the individuals in our organization, in CSCU's organization, that has the authority to execute. They can look at those documents and figure out who signed what document, but kind of putting a list of names out there is my issue. I have no concerns about sharing documents and expenditure information. If you look at the central website, you'll see all kinds of data that Dr. Toro had us put together to enhance transparency. But having a list of names of who the actual people are with the authority to do things is a risk. And you can mitigate that risk, but that's a decision for leadership.
Regent Casamento, I would thank you for your comments, and Regent Santiago for agreeing with them. But in the spirit of Professor Sasanker, I want to try and figure out a way to do both. And I'm going to ask General Counsel Bufkin if she can go through the state and other places to find ways that we can keep the organizations posted, but the individuals somewhat anonymous. And I would ask you to come back to us, come back to the Governance and Nominations Committee with what you're finding on able to post the information, but not to disclose the individual.
Thank you, Chair. Can I call for a motion?
You need a second. I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you, Rich. All right, all in favor? Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of this resolution and this policy signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you, Regent Porth, and for the hard work of the Governance Nominations Committee, our compliance leadership, our general counsel leadership in the institutions. Human Resource Administration Committee, Sophia Japinen, I understand there's no report.
Correct.
Thank you so kindly. Technology Committee, Chair Ted Yang is absent today, but actually working in spaces and places we can't disclose, but on behalf of the system. He has no report, but he has provided the board members with some information on our Ellucian project status report, which the Ellucian banner project was executed in June, I think initiated on September 6th. I think it started September 26th. I think we're 7% through, and we're going to finish that whole project the mid-March of 2027. We're coming to the end of our meeting. Before we go to executive session, I would like to thank President Ismaili, his executive assistant Pam Wren. There are people here that I've met earlier, like Nick and Emma and Ken and Lisa and Michaela. So we appreciate, and I've missed a few, but I want to make sure that I say your names and call you out, because we appreciate the work you do, and the place doesn't run without you, trust me. Before I call for a motion to move to executive session, let me state members of the Board of Regents will move to executive session in accordance with 1-200, subsection 6A and E of the general statutes to discuss drafts and personnel matters. No votes will be taken in the executive session. The Board of Regents will reconvene today following executive session, and it is anticipated that there may be a vote coming out of executive session. This vote will be related to the Board of Regents' operational policies. So this is kind of an internal vote based upon how the board interacts with each other in institutions. Invitees to executive session for all or part of the executive session will be John Maduco, Karen Bufkin, Jessica Paquette, Adam Joseph, as they may have information or testimony that is pertinent to the items discussed in executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Motion to go into adjourn to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We'll now stop the live streaming and go into executive session in the room next to this room. Thank you. Ari, can you hear me, Elise?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
The board is out of executive session now. The business with which we conducted very productively in executive session requires no vote. So with that, no votes will be taken now, and no votes, of course, were taken there. With that, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Elise. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Live streaming will stop. Thanks all
Bye.
online.